Hello makers, it's a release day for Whimsy Stamps, and so these two projects I made with one of the new releases. It's called Grumpin Punkins, and the stamps and the dies to cut them out were designed by Deb Davis, creative director at Whimsy Stamps, and I think they're super fun. And so I started to make a simple card for the release today. I have something else planned with these for later on, but then I decided I wanted to add a real quick decor piece with them too. So let's go ahead and get started, and then we'll talk about all the other things that I included along the way, because I did a lot of mind changing as I went, and so I share that with you in the tutorial, and then at the end we'll come back together and we'll chat about the details for both of these makes. Hello makers! Today is another release for Whimsy Stamps, and part of that release are these funny kind of grumpy pumpkins. They're called Grumpin Punkins, and they have a matching die set, and I really wanted to take part in the release today, so I'm going to make a simple card. I have another card that I'm going to be making with this stamp set later on, so I'm not going to tell you any more about that, but for today I just wanted to make a super quick card that you could maybe give to like a little kid, a neighbor child, or someone like that, a niece, nephew, grandchild, whatever. Maybe put it in their lunch. You could give it to a coworker. You can maybe put it on someone's desk if you're doing if you take part in the, you've been booed kind of things like that. So you could maybe do something like that with this card, or mail it to a friend who enjoys Halloween. So this is going to be a simple one, and in that spirit, I'm going to be using one of the backgrounds from the Whimsy Stamps Haunted paper pack. There are lots of great trees and graveyard scenes and pattern papers and things like that in this set, so it's a really good one to have. And it's called Haunted, and it's the number WSDP23 if you're interested. So I pulled 3 that I thought might work with these Grumpy Pumpkins. And so let's go ahead and get started just stamping them, cutting them out, and then deciding which one I think that they will fit on here the best. And then we'll go ahead and finish up the card so that it can be a quick, like I said, I want this to be quick and fast. It's not going to be heavy technique or anything, just a fun, quick Halloween card with some Grumpy Pumpkins. So let's get started. In my stamp platform, I have some Distress Mixed Media Heavy Stock. I just kept the entire piece in there. I didn't cut it down. I'm going to stamp. I have the stamps over here. I'm going to be stamping them, and then I'm going to be taking the paper off, coloring them with some Distress watercolor pencils, and then I'm going to be putting the paper back in. So that's why I have it against both of the guards on both sides here in the corner, flush against the corner, so that when I stamp, I'm going to leave it, and then I'll take the paper off, color, and then I can put it back in, and I'll be able to stamp over the watercolor pencils, because they tend to kind of dull the ink when you stamp it, and so this just gives it some fresh color when you stamp it again. So that's why I'm doing that. I'm going to be stamping them in archival ink, a little bit of black soot and a little bit of ground espresso. Black soot has more of a brown base to it as a black, rather than a kind of a purpley black. You know how blacks can have more, sometimes they're blue, or they're more of a brown base, and so black soot is more of a brown base black, and I prefer this one. So I'll be mixing these as I stamp them, then I'll go ahead and color them. So just wanted to update you on what things I'm using to stamp, and if you have some other sort of stamp platform, like a Misty or anything like that, just make sure that your paper is cut so that you can put it back in the exact same spot after you color it, so that you can re-stamp it. wanted to talk through this quickly. I learned this from Gina K on her live the other night. So she took a stamped image that she wanted to cut out like this. And she said to make sure that you get it exactly right every time. And so that it's not one way or the other way, especially after you spend a lot of time coloring it. You cut the shape out of scrap paper. And then you frame it so that you get the outline exactly the way you want it and equally around the whole thing. And then tape it. Okay, and then you take the die and you pop it in. Okay. Oops. And see how it's popped in and it's not moving? And it doesn't look centered to me, but the die cut part is. So a lot of that could be because maybe the inside isn't exactly equal or something. I don't know. Anyway, she was explaining that this is the way you do it. So let's try it. Okay. Because I'm not used to using dies with stamps. I'm used to fussy cutting, so I'll take any tips I can get. All right, here we go. And I'm just using my Sizzix Sidekick. Okay. Oh, look at that. Perfect. I love it. That was a great tip. Okay, so I'm going to just keep going. Thanks, Gina K. Well, my friends, it should be no surprise to you that I've already changed my mind. So I started making a simple card and decided that I have to do something a little bit more. So then I decided to compromise. So I'm going to make this into a simple card. I'm going to cut it in an A2 size card and kind of put these guys here, pop this one up a little bit, and sew around it like I usually do. In the moon, I'm going to stamp Sure, I'm smiling on the outside, but I just feel so empty inside. And then I will probably put maybe some bats or something like that over it and call it good. Try and keep it simple, like I said. Then there was this guy. He's hilarious, isn't he? Look at this guy. He's like an old pumpkin. And so I decided an old pumpkin might be super cute on a little tombstone. And so then I decided to go, this is where I decided to go like kind of more decor rather than card. So I wanted something substantial and not just paper. So I reached for an Etcetera tag, and Etcetera tags are made by Tim Holtz and Stampers Anonymous. These are a thick, it's a thick board. It's too thick to go through a cutter or die cuts. But it isn't wood. Sometimes people think it's wood, but it's really a thick, like a thick chipboard kind of. And they cut it with lasers. And so sometimes it's got a little bit of soot or burn on it. And so it will get on your fingers. So if you're working with white stuff, I recommend keeping like a wet wipe or something by your hands. You can wipe the soot off. But I usually don't because I'm distressing everything anyway. So it really doesn't matter to me. But I thought it would be really cute to use the tombstone. So these come as a tombstone. There are 3 sizes of tombstones that you can get that are kind of overlays that go on the tags. The tags usually come like this with a little reinforcer, but then they have some tombstones. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to use the little number 8 tombstone. And then there are 2 that are a little bit larger than this. And it comes with parts that you can use. So they come on a separate set. And as you can see, they are cut out and you pop them out. And then you can do a couple of things. So there's 2 pieces that go on the bottom of the tombstone, like this, and then like this. So you can see that it's got some dimension. You can use just one of them or just one of them. And in a recent project I made, I used just, you know, the front piece on one of the larger tombstones. But it's also fun to layer them like this. And then the top, there's two things you can do. So it comes with this part of the overlay. You could just do that. Then there's this piece. You can pop out the center and use this and then put something in there like a name or something like that. Or you could use the pop out part and then put something like a name or die cut, you know, several pieces that you die cut and you could put across there and give it some dimension. So I decided I wanted to use one of these. Well, one of the other things you can do, now these cut really well with, I use my Tim Holtz, these scissors. And you can cut through it with these scissors. And so I may do that, but I may just use paper and then just use this piece. Is what I'm kind of leaning toward, a simple tombstone decor piece. And I want to put this paper on here. And since I'm going to cover this part here and it has this break in it, I think I'm going to do it so that this is like this. The moon's over on the side just a little bit. Then I'll have the pumpkin. And let me see, where's the bottom here? So I'll have the little pumpkin guy kind of underneath just a little bit. Like that. And like this is his tombstone. And then on this moon, so I'm using the moons to try and keep it simple. I'm going to stamp this as his epitaph. It says, "The jack-o'-lantern chuckled and winked his funny eye. I'd rather be a pumpkin face than inside a pumpkin pie." And I thought that would make a funny epitaph for this guy. And then if I needed to, I could, for his name up here, I could just stamp Grumpin Punkin, right? Have all the papers ready to attach to this. So this is eventually going to go behind here, but I'm not attaching it yet. First, I want to attach this to the front and let it dry, and then I'll sand it, ink it, and then I'll use my craft knife to cut around the inside, sand it a little bit, ink it, and then I'll attach it to this and it'll show through like that. Then I have a little bit cut off the bottom of one of the papers that I'm just going to put on this edge here. And then I'll sand it. And then on this front edge, I have the bottom of one of the papers that I cut that I'm going to attach on here. And then I'll trim around it, sand it. Then I'll put these together. And this is going to go on here. Like this. And then I will sand it as well. And let me make sure that's going to go up just a little bit. So there we go. So that'll be fine. And then we'll have our pumpkin on there. And that'll be a cute little decor piece, and it's gone together fairly quickly. So to attach my papers, I'm going to use Distress Collage Medium. This is an old jar that I've had for a while, but it looks like this now. And same stuff, just I had a whole bunch of old jars, so I just didn't want you to get confused what I'm using. It's the Distress Collage Medium. I have a Distress Collage Medium brush. These come in 3 sizes. And all I do is take a significant amount. I brush it on. I don't want too much because I don't want it to squish out from underneath, but I want a nice layer. And then I keep my Inky Binky by me so that I can wipe off excess. And then this went like this. I'm going to put it right to this side over here. Okay. And I'm going to push it down. And you have a little bit of time. It dries very quickly with paper, but you do have a little bit of time to work with it while it's drying. Okay. And then I usually kind of keep pressing on it just to make sure that it's completely on there. I don't have any on the front, just on that back so that it is stuck to the paper. You can see there's a little bit that came over this side, and that's okay. I will be sanding the edges with the sanding block. I have these sanding blocks that I keep handy for just this purpose, and so I will sand it just a little bit. All right, then I'm going to do the same thing to these pieces. So I'll let you watch that in fast forward. Well, I did it again. I thought I was videotaping and I took a picture. So sorry. I totally thought I videotaped me sewing this and I didn't. My apologies. If you don't generally sew, I will have to try on another one to show you how to sew. Some of my cards last year I did sewing demonstrations, so I'll try and link one in the description for this card if you'd like to go back and see how to sew on paper if you're not familiar with it. But really it's just like sewing on fabric, except that for Halloween, or really for any other time if you want. You don't have to keep it nice and, you know, straight and clean. You can just have all kinds of little bits hanging and all that stuff like that. Messy stitching. See all the messy stitching? Doesn't have to be straight or anything like that. Just fun, crazy stitching. And you can see that I decided to put it on this piece of paper that has these guys on the back. Since this is double-sided paper, I thought that added a little something to it. And then I can just put my pumpkins on, and I'm almost done. I'll need to attach it to a card base, but I'm almost finished. I just feel like it needs something else, and so I grabbed the little bats that were part of the August release, and I pulled 2 of them off quickly, and then I cut some of the paper that I used earlier for, actually it's the other bottom part of this I'm using for the bats. So I just trimmed the little black part of the hill off, and these barely fit on there, but I can get them to fit, and I'm gonna cut them. All right, so I popped the bats up once I got the eyes on, and you saw me cutting the eyes out, and I just layered them. So the black layer is underneath, and then the colored layer is on top, and I just cut it from the back piece of the mat. So it had some kind of light orange, and so I just used that. and the card's done. So let me go ahead and get to work on the tombstone, and then we'll talk about this when I come back. These are dry now. I worked on the card while these were drying, so that's usually what I'll do is I'll work on something else while the paper's drying. It will be stuck to it before it's completely dry, but it's difficult to sand and some things like that when it's still wet. At this point, what I will do is usually cut off any excess if it's far enough out that I can kind of cut it off. This is all dry now, and so it's good to go. I think it's super cute. I think I've changed my mind. I think I'm going to go get one of the die cuts or embossing things that I have that says RIP, and I'm going to put that up here. And once I get that done and before I attach him, I'm going to add some of my favorite part of the Halloween distress release. I put this on all over one of my cards last year, where I used the Build a Graveyard and the Slimline Meadow die cut, and I made a meadow graveyard, and I put tons of Crypt paste on everything. I absolutely love it. So this is a grit paste, and it has these really cool black flecks in it. And I go through at least one full tub of this every season because I slather it on all kinds of things. So what I usually do, I get it on my fingers. I love getting messy. So, and then this is a bit translucent and it has kind of a gray sheen when it dries, grayish green. But when you put it on something like this, I'm going to put it at the top because I'm still maybe going to be stamping at the bottom. Let that part dry so I can do a second coat kind of along the top. And I'm going to set this aside. I'll finish the bottom part after I decide if I need to stamp. So here's what I was talking about. It's the Slimline Graveyard die, and I haven't gotten to use it yet. I have this out, and I think something like this, yeah, see, that one will fit right on there. And I'll probably cut this out and emboss this. well, I sure did change my mind a lot, didn't I? But I'm really happy with the outcome. So let's go ahead and talk first about the card and the elements that I used with this. So as I said in the beginning, the paper pack I used was the Haunted paper pack. So I used this pattern paper with the pumpkins and spider webs and skulls and things like that as kind of my back base. And then there's the card that's base that's on the back of it as well. And then for the main piece, another piece from the Haunted paper pack. I cut off quite a bit around the edge to get it to fit the A2 size. And with some of the parts that were left, they were black, especially down here at the bottom. So I used that strip and I cut out 2 of the bats from the new Batty die set. These little bats are so darling, aren't they? I think they're just so funny with their little facial expressions. And so I used a little bit of the orange paper from the back side of this paper to cut the eyes. And so I just think these bats are so cute. So these are only 2. There are quite a few in the set. And that was also designed by Deb Davis and Denise Lynn, owner and creative director at Whimsy Stamps. Now the Grumpin Punkins, they were colored with watercolor, distressed watercolor pencils. And then I stamped them again to make sure that the image was nice and dark over the colored pencils. Popped them up with some pop dots on this background paper, and then I stamped the sentiment also from the Grumpin Punkins. I don't know why I have a hard time saying that. The Grumpin Punkins stamp set, and it says, "Sure, I'm smiling on the outside, but I just feel so empty inside." So for a simple card, I think this turned out really well. And then again, I'm sorry that I messed up and didn't get the I wasn't videotaping. I took a picture instead when I was sewing around here, but I will link, as I said before, I will link in the description for this video to a card from last year where I did do a sewing tutorial for those of you who haven't done that before. All right. And then as I was working, as you know, I decided I want to make a little tiny decor piece. And so I used the tombstone from Stampers Anonymous, Etcetera line. Same background paper from the Haunted paper pack, same paper line. Also used a different sentiment from the Grumpin Punkins stamp set that says, and I used it as kind of, since this is a tombstone, of course, as kind of the epitaph for this. This looks like a Grumpin Punkin, right? And so his epitaph is kind of funny. The jack-o'-lantern chuckled and winked his funny eye. I'd rather be a pumpkin face than inside a pumpkin pie. So I think that's cute and funny, and it kind of reminds me of those, the tombstones kind of around the Haunted Mansion for the different Imagineers and things, and how they, you know, have their different demise that they came into. And so I think this is funny. He looks like an old guy, Grumpin Punkin, doesn't he? So then I used this sentiment, Grumpin Punkin, and I used that as maybe his name on the tombstone. And then since I was doing a tombstone, I cut this piece out and this piece out from the Decrepit grave die set that was also designed by Deb Davis from, it was released last year for the one of the Halloween releases, and it's just so great to go along with so many things. And so the rest in peace, RIP, and then this piece here at the bottom that I stamped on are both from the Decrepit grave SLIMLINE die set. So I think that covered everything that I used. But the main thing, of course, is now the bats were released last month, but the main thing are these darling Grumpin Pumpkins that all look a little bit grumpy, but so cute, aren't they? And so fun to work with. So I'm looking forward to making something else with these this week. But today is all about celebrating their release from Whimsy Stamps. And so if you have any questions about either of these things that I made today, I'm sure that I didn't cover all of it in the editing. I'm sure I cut some stuff out. So if you want any more details, just ask me in the comments below for this video or on my blog at placewellwithpaper.blogspot.com. there's a contact me section in the right hand column, and that will send me a message that you have a question, and I'll be glad to answer it. I want to thank you so much for making it this far, because I haven't edited it yet, but I have a feeling this might have been a little bit longer than I intended it to be. So thank you very much for watching, and I want to wish you a very creative day.